watch a horror movie where you're yelling at the screen like, "Don't go in there." Yeah, that was basically every day in ancient Egypt. Except instead of ghosts or serial killers, the monsters were real life. Plagues, crocodiles, cursed tombs, and medical treatments that make you grateful for antibiotics. People like to imagine Egypt as this golden paradise of pyramids, perfume, and Cleopatra lounging around with grapes. But honestly, it was more like Saw meets National Geographic. Let's start with what everyone forgets. Egypt was beautiful, but it wanted you dead. The Nile was both your best friend and your worst nightmare. It fed the crops, sure, but it also hid things, big, scaly, prehistoric things. Imagine walking to the river to fill your water jar and seeing a set of yellow eyes just above the surface. Crocodiles weren't rare, they were everywhere. Some villages literally built walls just to keep them out. And these weren't cute zoo crocodiles. These guys could reach 20 feet long and had jaws strong enough to crush bone. People actually worshipped them out of fear. The god Sobek, a literal crocodile-headed deity, was basically the ancient version of "please don't eat me." And even if the crocodiles didn't get you, the river might. The Nile flooded every year, and while farmers depended on it, a bad flood could wipe out entire towns. Too little water, famine, too much water, drownings, ruined crops, and villages turned into mud soup. Imagine spending your whole year praying that your river behaves. That's not civilization, that's a hostage situation. Now you'd think the rich upper class had it better, right? Golden jewelry, servants fanning them, fancy tombs, luxury. Nope, their skincare routines were toxic. Literally, ancient Egyptians were obsessed with beauty. They wore makeup daily, men and women both. Kohl eyeliner, malachite eyeshadow, red ochre lipstick, gorgeous, but laced with lead. They didn't know it at the time, but they were slowly poisoning themselves in the name of fashion. Their perfume oils, mixed with fat and animal musk. Their wigs, infested with lice. People had to shave their heads just to stop the itching, then wear wigs made of someone else's hair. It's like trading one horror for another. And don't even start on their medical practices. You think medieval Europe was bad? Ancient Egypt said, "Hold my beer." Their doctors were half geniuses, half mad scientists. They had scrolls describing surgeries, dental care, even brain injury treatments. Impressive for the time. But the cures? Oh boy, if you had a headache, they might rub a dead mouse on it. Toothache? A paste of donkey fat and powdered rock. Infection? Animal dung, yes, actual feces, applied directly to the wound. People would literally die of treatment. One medical text suggested crocodile dung as birth control, which technically worked because who's in the mood after that? Speaking of childbirth, let's talk about that absolute nightmare. Childbirth in ancient Egypt was one of the leading causes of death for women. No hospitals, no painkillers, no sterile anything. They gave birth squatting on special birthing bricks, with two women holding them up, while a priest chanted nearby to scare off demons. Because obviously if something went wrong, it wasn't infection or complications, it was ghosts. And if the baby died, they sometimes mummified it, which is both fascinating and heartbreaking. Tiny sarcophagi have been found with perfectly wrapped infants, real-life evidence of how much pain they lived with, all under a civilization that looked glamorous from a distance. But hey, if you made it past childbirth and crocodiles, congrats, time to face your next nightmare, the bugs. Ancient Egypt was crawling, literally. Mosquitoes spreading malaria, fleas, lice, sandflies that burrowed into your skin. And the heat made everything worse. Without modern sanitation, you were basically living in an open-air sauna filled with insects. Imagine sweating under the Egyptian sun, covered in oils and perfumes to mask the smell, while flies buzz around your face and snakes slither near your feet. The tomb paintings never show that part. Now, hygiene. You've probably heard that Egyptians were clean freaks, and it's true, to an extent. They bathed in the Nile, used natron salts as soap, shaved their bodies, and even invented deodorant made of crushed lotus and incense. But guess what? The Nile wasn't exactly a spa. Everyone bathed, fished, and did laundry in the same water where animals pooped and corpses sometimes drifted. They didn't know about bacteria, so they'd just hop in and hope the gods were feeling generous that day. Basically, their daily hygiene routine was one step away from a horror movie subplot. And since we're already knee-deep in disturbing details, let's talk about their jobs. Being a worker in ancient Egypt was brutal. You've seen the pyramids, right? Those weren't built by aliens. They were built by sunburned humans, and their lives were pure exhaustion. Imagine hauling multi-ton limestone blocks in 110-degree heat, with minimal food, and someone yelling in hieroglyphics at you to go faster. Archaeological evidence shows workers with fractured spines, worn-down knees, and crushed bones. They were buried near the pyramids with beer and bread as their afterlife thank you gifts. Not exactly hazard pay, and if you were a farmer, things weren't much better. The soil was good, but the taxes were worse. Officials literally measured your crops and took a cut. If you came up short, you could be beaten or imprisoned. There are wall paintings showing tax collectors with sticks. Bureaucracy and violence, the first horror combo in history. Now let's creep into the night, because ancient Egypt after dark, that's when things got properly spooky. They truly believed the world was crawling with spirits. Every shadow, every creak of the wind could mean a ghost, a god, or something worse. They filled their homes with protective charms, wore amulets, and even drew hieroglyphs on walls to keep demons away. The line between religion and horror was paper thin. The afterlife was their biggest obsession, and their biggest fear. The Egyptians were terrified of dying wrong. Not dying, dying wrong. They believed if your body wasn't preserved perfectly, your soul couldn't find peace. That's why mummification became an art form, but also a horror show in itself. Picture this. You're lying on a stone table while embalmers remove your organs through your nose using a metal hook. Then they pack your body with salt to dry you out, wrap you in hundreds of feet of linen, and seal you in a coffin surrounded by spells to keep your spirit safe. It sounds poetic until you realize embalmers often worked surrounded by corpses all day, reeking of chemicals and decay. Some even wore jackal masks representing Anubis, the god of death. Imagine walking into that workshop at night, dozens of mummies, incense smoke, shadows moving in the torchlight. That's not a job, that's a horror set. And yet, their obsession with death created the greatest monuments in human history. The pyramids, the tombs, the Valley of the Kings, all built to help someone not stay dead wrong. But the Egyptians also believed tombs could be cursed. Real ones written right on the walls. All who enter this tomb will be eaten by crocodiles and scorpions. That's not metaphorical. That's a literal ancient death threat. Even today, archaeologists tread carefully, because whether you believe in curses or not, it's hard to laugh when people who ignored them mysteriously got sick or died. Even their pets weren't safe from the horror. Cats were sacred. Killing one, even by accident, was punishable by death. Some households mummified their cats, birds, and even monkeys to take them into the afterlife. They believed animals could protect them from dark forces, which honestly makes sense. If my house had crocodile gods and plague spirits, I'd want backup too. The irony is, for all their fear of death, Egyptians found comfort in the idea that life was just one chapter. The afterlife wasn't the end. It was a test. You'd stand before Osiris, heart in hand, while it was weighed against the feather of truth. If your heart was heavier, meaning full of guilt and sin, it got eaten by a monster called Amit, part crocodile, part lion, part hippo. That's like being judged by 3 predators at once. So yeah, death wasn't peaceful. It was an exam you couldn't afford to fail. What's wild is that for all their terror, the Egyptians were also weirdly practical. They believed in science and magic at the same time, that a spell could heal a broken bone as long as the bandage was tight enough, that the gods watched you through the stars, but your crops still depended on the weather. Their world was a constant tug-of-war between logic and fear, life and decay. And maybe that's why their civilization lasted thousands of years, because they respected danger. They didn't pretend to control it. They just tried to coexist with it, decorate it, and make it meaningful. Even their hieroglyphs, those elegant little pictures, often told stories of chaos. Serpents swallowing the sun, rivers turning to blood, spirits devouring souls. If Egypt had movie theaters, they would have loved horror films, because they lived one. So next time someone calls the ancient Egyptians mystical or majestic, remember, they were also survivors. Survivors of plague, flood, heat, poison, crocodiles, and curses. They lived in a world where even beauty could kill you, and every god you prayed to might ask for something terrifying in return. When you really think about it, ancient Egypt wasn't just history, it was a living horror universe. The pyramids, tombs built from fear of eternal punishment. The gods, beasts that could bless or destroy. The rituals, half religion, half dark magic, and through it all, humanity kept pushing forward, painting murals, writing poetry, falling in love, raising kids, hoping their hearts would weigh light enough to survive the afterlife. So yeah, life back then might have looked glorious on the outside, but peel back the gold and you'd find something far darker, a world haunted by superstition, surrounded by death, and ruled by a river that gave life only if it felt like it. Ancient Egyptian life was basically a horror movie. They just didn't have popcorn. And if this glimpse into their nightmare world gave you chills, hit that like button. It helps more than you think. Subscribe for more stories that prove history was way scarier than fiction, and let me know in the comments. Would you survive a week in ancient Egypt? Or would the curses get you first?